Okay, so Nokia, you fairly recently, I think, published your 2023 People and Planet Sustainability Report. And I just know you break it down into five areas, which we'll have a look at in a minute. But I think your primary sort of objective or statement is that you do believe that making sustainability and wider sort of ESG, you see it as potentially being a competitive advantage. So be great to sort of understand a little bit about that philosophy.
Sure, thank you and great to be here. Um, Nokia's annual sustainability report is called People and Planet Report, and I'm particularly always very inspired by the name because obviously across the world, it's been long established that there are three things that corporations need to look at: profit, which has been talked longer than the world of sustainability, I would imagine, and the other two being people and planet. So it's no surprise that we chose to call our annual sustainability report as People and Planet Report. But that's a report we have been actually publishing for close to 2 decades now, to be honest. This was many years before sustainability reporting and ESG reporting became regulatory requirements in many markets, and many years before some of the frameworks like GRI and others came into force. But of course, in recent time, this is a very structured approach. We publish this every year. We follow several global standards. And going forward, given the new regulations in Europe and US that are coming in, as well as in various markets, we will continue to evolve our sustainability report, our People and Planet report, and put it in line with the various regulatory framework. So that's the broader context of this. What we do is every year we outline a set of close to 170 data points that we publish in different forms and shape throughout our sustainability report. I must emphasize that not all of these reportings are mandatory, but we go to measure ourselves against many of the internal targets that we set up, because we believe strongly that until we measure and look at the trends, we can't impact a change. So we are not measuring just for the purpose of reporting it in statutory regulations and so on, but we are also measuring a number of these KPIs for our internal impact assessments. As you said, we look at it from 5 different lenses of where Nokia believe that we can impact our stakeholders. The lenses being the 5 areas of our ESG strategy, and I'm sure we are going to dive into that soon. But essentially, the connection of that to our competitive advantage is we've been publishing these reports, as I said, for a long time. We've been looking at how we can impact in these various areas. But last year, we took another stake in the ground by when we announced our sort of refreshed company strategy in March 2023, and we said that one of the key pillars of Nokia's business strategy, and I'm going to be harping on the word business strategy, is to make ESG or sustainability as a competitive advantage. I think there's a lot of discussion in the industry about every company has a sustainability strategy or ESG strategy, but very few companies have put together sustainability as part of their business strategy. And this, I would argue, is the biggest change we need to see forward, going forward for corporations. We've taken the first step. Obviously, a lot of work is still ahead of us, but our 6th pillar of our corporate strategy is ESG and sustainability as a competitive advantage for Nokia. And that's what we are trying to drive through in measuring and impacting what it means for our stakeholders, our customers, our shareholders, and our employees. And can we differentiate ourselves and create new value for each of these groups through our execution. So 2023 wasn't perfect, as you would have seen in our People and Planet report, but there are many bright spots and many areas that we also need to work for going forward to improve.
Yeah, okay, and perhaps we can move on to those 5 pillars or 5 areas. So the first one, and just if you want to say a little bit, I know as you outlined there. There are a lot of sort of metrics and measurements, but if you want to pick some sort of highlights out as to what you've done and what more there is to come, and the first one is environment. So obviously that's quite a big topic in its own right, but yeah, just if you can share some things that are going on that side.
Yeah, environment is huge, and not just because it's huge for us, but it's a big topic across the world and including in the ICT industry. The way we define environment pillar for us. So first, we have 5 pillars of ESG strategy. The first pillar we call environment. The second pillar, and the order is not so important, but the second pillar of our strategy is about bridging digital divide. The third pillar of our strategy is about security and privacy of the networks and the infrastructure we provide and the responsibilities we have around that. The fourth pillar of our strategy is industrial digitalization. And I maybe, industrialization may be one of the early pillars, but that doesn't matter. The fourth pillar of our strategy is industrial digitalization, where we look at how we are impacting our handprint impact on other physical industries in terms of their decarbonization pathway. And the fifth pillar is what we call as responsible business, which is a combination of everything we need to do as a company to conduct our business responsibly in our supply chain, among our employees through diversity, equity, and inclusion, in health and safety of our employees as well as our suppliers, in ethics and compliance areas, in human rights areas. So it's a combination of various things we need to do to be a responsible business. So these 5 pillars are the various aspects of our ESG strategy. Of that, environment, as you pointed out, is one of the very big first pillar. And we have 3 parts to environment. The first is obviously climate. The second is circularity. And the third is the emerging area of the impact on nature, so biodiversity and geodiversity. The climate, so I'll start off with climate because there's significant interest and urgency in terms of the impact on climate. So the first thing I would say is our 2023 performance on climate has been, I would define that as a year of progress, but a significant work yet to be done. So to put this in context, we had our previously announced climate target, which was an SBT, science-based target initiative, aligned 50% reduction from 2019 to 2030. So this is something that we had already announced 2 years ago, and we've been working towards that. However, this year, in February 2024, we announced a further acceleration to that target. The original 50% reduction target was announced in 2021. So we looked at the urgency that the world needs and our customers and the communities we operate need in terms of accelerating climate targets. So we announced an accelerated net zero ambition in February this year. This was done at Mobile World Congress. And basically, there are many parts of that announcement, but basically we said we will go to zero greenhouse gas emission by 2040. So when I compare with 2019, it will go down to zero, 100% reduction, with 90% being organically with the Nokia and 10% allowed by SBTi in terms of carbon offset. We also said that we want to accelerate our already announced 2030 target. So remember, I said we had the target of 50% reduction. Now we are saying that for scope 1 and 2, except a hard to abate part of our scope 1, which is in marine fleet, we want to go 100%. So we want to go complete decarbonization in our own operation, scope 1 and 2, except the marine fleet, which will go through a little slower growth, and we're going to come to that in a moment. And for scope 3, we will continue to drive for the 50% reduction. So overall, for scope 1 and 2, we want to now go 83% instead of the 50% reduction that we announced earlier. Now, in terms of the progress of this, quite a few significant progress, I would say, in 23. First is the total scope 1, 2, and 3 greenhouse gas emission in 23 was 11% lower than 2022, of which there are a few, I would say, bright spots and few areas we need to work as well. The first is we are very well on track on our own renewable energy transformation. So by end of 2023, we have already achieved 75% of all purchased electricity for Nokia's facilities around the world. You know that we do business in more than 120 countries. So all facilities across the world, of 75% of those facilities, electricity comes from renewable sources for us. We have the public target in line with RE100, of which we are part of, to make this 100% by next year, so 2025. So this is already, we're tracking well. We are already at 75% by end of 23, but we still have to, some room to grow to get there to 100% by end of next year. Another aspect of our achievement has been the logistics emissions. So, as you know, in our industry, products get manufactured in one places, then they get shipped through multimodal transportation, air, marine, trains, trucks. So it's a complex global logistics ecosystem. And we've been able to reduce our logistics emissions. So we track our logistics emissions separately as well by 54%. From 2019. So from our baseline year of 2019 to 2023, the reduction has been 54%. And I'm specifically highlighting some of these things which are actually somewhat hard to achieve, and I'm pleased about. I mean, there are a few other things, and you can read that. The last one I would highlight here is the achievement of our mobile networks massive MIMO base station power consumption. So the 5G massive MIMO base stations are consuming 50% less power in 23. So with the latest Habrok set that was out there in the market by end of 23, the power consumption of that versus the first generation of massive MIMO that came in 2019, there is a 50% energy consumption reduction, and we already had a target to achieve that, and we achieved that by end of 2019. The challenge, what it still remains, is if you draw a straight line from 2019 to 2030, and where we need to be in 2023 in terms of the reduction, we are above that straight line, which means that we are not in line with a linear reduction target. We still have work to do. We don't believe that our target reduction will be linear because there are cycles in our industry and product sales are different. But if for a moment we are to assume that we are going to decline linearly, then we are above that budget. So we are accelerating our work to make sure we are getting close to that kind of reduction path.
And in terms of that what you've described, I'm just wondering how much of it is within your own control, and I mean, I'm sure we'll chat about it elsewhere as well, and how much are you reliant on, partners to do their bit as well, I suppose. So, whether you're having a dialogue with them, or whether it's what they supply to you in components, or as you say, logistics, etc. Just how easy, I suppose, is what I'm saying, is it for you to control your own destiny as opposed to wait for other people to do things on your behalf?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of debate in the industry about what companies control and what are beyond the control. What I would say is, from a numbers point of view, if I break down, typically scope 1 and 2 of companies' emissions should be fully in their control, and scope 3 is considered the value chain. So you can argue scope 3 is downstream and upstream value chain, your customers and your suppliers. So you can argue to some extent, and for many corporations also possibly true, that you don't have control on your value chain in a way. But I would argue this way. Of course, scope 1 and 2 are within our control. There are challenges in scope 1 and 2 as well, and we are working through that. So, for example, we have a marine fleet business. As you know, we have a submarine cable business that puts all the submarine cables between continents. And as part of maintaining that submarine cables, we own our own marine fleet. and there are no easy ways to decarbonize marine fleet. It's obviously we are not in the business of making hydrogen-based marine fleet, but the availability of marine fleet is an international maritime organizations marine fleet decarbonization pathway is slower than and where than what we would like to see in this market. So that makes it difficult even within our own operation. But obviously, what people talk about is outside in the value chain is more difficult. But I would say it's all about collaborative action. So if I look at our suppliers, so we have a target of 100% reduction already by 2030 of emissions from our final assembly suppliers, which are our manufacturing suppliers. So lots of Nokia's goods get manufactured by our EMS suppliers. We have let's say 6 or 7 big EMS suppliers who manufacture and do finished assembly goods. We have our own factories. These are in addition to those factories. We have a plan of greenhouse gas reduction by 2030. We are tracking that. We work very collaboratively with them. They are already very much in track. When I say we work very collaboratively, it's not just about, hey, how much have you achieved this year and data exchange. It's about continuous workshop, being able to share what we are working on, but also sharing resources to make sure we are jointly getting there. Logistics, I shared a 54% reduction. That reduction is not just because it's not just asking for reduction, it's working with our logistics partner to make sure. So if there's a SAF, a sustainable aviation fuel project that our logistics partner needs to get to, we jointly invest with them. We jointly work with them to make this happen. So yes, it is in a way outside our influence, but I strongly believe that we can influence many of the things that our value chain suppliers are working on. Similarly, with our customers, 95% of our scope 3 emission comes from the use of our products in our customers. So when our customers switch on their mobile base station or they switch on their ONT plug or they do IP and PLS network activation, that's when we have scope 3 category 11 emissions. Part of that is power consumption related, which we are, as I mentioned, some great success across our mobile networks, IP and optical business in 2023. But part of that is also what electricity our customers are consuming. So if they're having diesel-powered base station, irrespective of how much energy power consumption our products will help in reducing, we're going to have a high greenhouse gas emission from that base station as compared to a solar-powered site. So we are working very closely with customers also on many geographies, especially the geographies where the transformation into renewable energy is not that easy. On many innovative solutions, like how can you reuse the energy consumption through technologies like liquid heating, virtual power plants and those things, so that the total power consumption of those sites go down, because obviously you're limited by the kind of renewable energy you can get in a country. So more innovations can kind of help in accelerating that journey. So we're working very closely with our partners and customers on that.
Okay, and perhaps we can move on to one of the other pillars. I call it number 2, but I don't know where it is in the order, but industrial digitalisation. And I'm wondering, is that both sort of internally or is it more externally you're wanting to help this, the digitalisation that everyone seems to be on a digital transformation journey, and that's what you're helping to enable? Is that the main focus?
Sorry, and you got me corrected, because that's when I was talking about the pillar numbers, number 2 was indeed industrial digitalization, and I mentioned number 4 when I realized, where did that go? So it is indeed number 2. So yes, so the way we define is, I mean, the premise of this is we believe that digitalization technologies and especially connectivity and connected intelligence that we as Nokia provide have significant impact in a few areas, transitioning the physical industries. Decarbonization is a big focus area for physical industries. When I say physical industries, I mean manufacturing, transportation, ports, mines, process industries like logistics and so on. But it also about their health and safety and labor productivity. So all of these things for us are sustainability impact of our solutions. And the idea of the industrial digitalization is, as Nokia continue to I would say, accelerate our transformation from a telco supplier to a broader sort of enterprise and industrial digitalization enabler, we believe that there is a significant opportunity we have in not just improving the connectivity and the efficiency of these industries, but also their sustainability parameters, including decarbonization, health and safety, and labor conditions and productivity. So that's the concept of the industrial digitalization pillar. In terms of our progress, and we have now got, by the end of last year, we've got 710 private wireless customers. We are in a leading position in the market. And we believe that with a large number of these private wireless deployments in large scale, let's say, energy companies or ports or mines, we are already seeing significant benefits for their decarbonization pathway, water usage reduction, labor productivity, as well as health and safety. And that's the area where we would like to kind of double down as we grow in our enterprise. So as an example, in this industry, so we partner with Kyndryl, who's one of the big IT enablers. And we worked with Dow Chemical last year to digitalize the largest integrated chemical manufacturing facility they have in Freeport in Texas. And one of the big outputs of that engagements is basically, we successfully help them remove paper from manufacturing and the maintenance process. So it's just one example of physical industries who are typically, as you know, in this world, from an emission point of view, the physical industries are the most significant contributor. So if you look at energy sector, they're close to 30% of global emission as compared to telecom and ICT sector, which is only 2%. So impact on these sectors are significant in terms of driving towards overall net zero. So that's the essence of our industrial digitalization pillar.
Okay, and then another sort of important pillar would be the security and privacy focus. And again, that I know that's a fairly significant topic in its own right. But again, if you can just give us some sort of highlights as to what's going on there and what more is planned.
Yeah, it is. As you point out, it's really a critical pillar. I would say it's always been a critical pillar, so no question about that. But as networking moves from the domains of telcos into a widespread, similar technology moving from the world of telcos to data center connectivity to enterprise and some of the critical sectors like defense and smart cities and ports and others. I think the concept of security has grown multifold in terms of both the vulnerability but also the dimensions of threats that we as a company need to kind of continuously monitor and make sure it is we are always on top of it. So in last year, we expanded our initiatives to safeguard some of this key data with things like Nokia's Zero Trust and Critical Information Protection Program. It includes hundreds and thousands of employees being trained on this quarterly in every part of the business, in every market. And we have application security programs, which are now training programs for all our employees. We have developed and maintained an actionable cyber resilience service that's built on the assessment of cyber risk that Nokia does across all the countries that we do. We have something called the Cyber Defense Center, and we have increased our investment into that, including in our computer emergency response team. We have strengthened our third-party security process because as more and more application developers and I would say players of different industries port their application on this critical network infrastructure that Nokia provides, it's not just obviously important for us to keep the security tight within ours and our customers' network, but also within those third-party security processes. So So some of these things remain critical for what we do, and we continue to focus on increasing our investment in security.
And the next pillar to cover perhaps is what you call bridging the digital divide. So
Mhm.
um, that sounds like a sort of social responsibility angle, but please expand on what you mean by it, and again, what sort of activities are going on.
Yeah, yeah. So that pillar actually, you got it right. It has actually two parts, I would say. So the way we define bridging digital divide is this one part about connecting the unconnected and underserved. So that's connectivity driven, and the second part is about digital skill building. The second part of digital skill building is often intervened through social or corporate social responsibility initiatives. But the first part is also about our technology portfolio. So think about the role of non-terrestrial network players, LEOs, GEOs that are coming in increasingly, and what can Nokia do to be able to influence taking internet and broadband speeds connectivity to the areas where it has not yet reached. So, for example, we announced last year the work with AST Mobile, where it's the first satellite-based connectivity using 3GPP devices. So we are working with AST Mobile, and AST Mobile in turn is working with other telcos like AT&T and Vodafone to be able to get satellite connectivity on 3GPP phones, so our regular phones. We believe it's a great opportunity, because obviously 3GPP phones are everywhere, and it's a great way to bring connectivity in underserved areas. Um, we also have our broadband, the home broadband programs, which are aggressively pursuing different opportunities to reach areas, and I wouldn't say only in the developing markets, but also in the developed markets, like in the US, there's a huge gap in rural broadband connectivity. So some of our broadband programs are getting closely, aligned with the new initiatives that are there. So we were part of, for example, the BEAD program in the US to start manufacturing within the US for rural connectivity programs. Our mobile subscription, for example, are growing into areas where previously there are no connectivities available. So there is a whole connectivity part. But as you rightly pointed out, we also believe we must provide the opportunities for people who has the connectivity to do something, better access to education, better access to healthcare with those connectivity. So last year we reached 691,500 odd direct beneficiaries, so close to 700,000 direct beneficiaries through our intervention programs in various social digitalization programs in multiple countries. For example, in India, we run in about 350 villages what is called Smart Poor program, which basically offers villagers opportunity to connect with the internet and various other skills and give them access to jobs and agricultural data and so on. So that's a digital divide from both angle, connectivity as well as skill building. And should I briefly cover the fifth
Yeah, I
pillar?
was going to say, I mean, responsible
Close the
business.
circle.
I'm sure what much of what you've already explained would come under, that sort of heading. But
Yeah.
what more does responsible business cover, I guess?
Yeah, a couple of additional things beyond what I just covered. I think that some of the key things that I'm particularly excited about in the responsible business pillar is our human rights work. Human rights has been and continue to be even more important going forward. We are very conscious of what we are source of critical infrastructure and internet infrastructure around the world. We feel it's our responsibility to ensure that the usage of those critical infrastructure are for the right purpose and for the purpose of not suppressing information and opportunity and privacy of individuals around the world. So our human rights due diligence program has been running for a very long time and has been assessed very strong. So there's this global organization called GNI, which is called Global Network Initiative, which by end of 2023 did their second assessment of our human rights due diligence program. They do this across the telco industry, and we came out one of the strongest in human rights due diligence program, and we are very pleased about it. I'll also highlight the work with our suppliers. We at 71 supplier sites across the world in 18 countries, we conducted close to 650 improvement recommendations with our suppliers. So as I mentioned earlier, our work with suppliers is not just assessing their KPIs, but also working very closely to make sure, all the parameters, not just environment, but labor conditions, health of the suppliers and the workers there, diversity, inclusion, all are assessed in the right way. And last but not the least, in ethics and compliance, we continue to have that as one of the key focus areas for the 8th year running. Last year, we were recognized by Ethisphere as one of the world's most ethical companies. It's a top priority for how we do business. So we keep our extremely strong internal and external supplier governance around that topic as well.
Okay, and I think you might have mentioned it already, but just in case you haven't, or just to re-emphasize, already I think in this year you've committed to net zero greenhouse gas emissions. I think all scopes 1 to 3 by 2040, and as presumably part of that, you're also accelerating your own progress towards what we talked about, what you can control directly, which is the scopes 1 to 2. Is that right?
That is correct. So in February 2024 at Mobile World Congress, we announced that we are accelerating our ambition to reach net zero greenhouse gas emission by 2040, which in the earlier commitment we wanted to get there by 2050. But many of our customers and suppliers and what we see around the world, for us to be keeping in line with the Paris Agreement, we must accelerate. So we are taking this additional measures to reach there by 2040, and that is across all the scopes, scope 1, 2, and 3. So in our own operations, in our purchased electricity, as well as with our suppliers and our customers. And of course, 2040 is still 16 years away, although feels like it will be around the corner very soon. So we have also done a midterm commitment of 2030, and as I mentioned, we have increased our ambition from the earlier announced 50% reduction in our own operations scope 1 and 2 to 83% by 2030. We have kept the 50% reduction target for scope 3, which is in our customers and our suppliers. But we believe that still will require a huge amount of acceleration from where the world is today, in terms of continuously driving for energy efficient products and services and innovation in our value chain, as well as working with the suppliers to make sure we are all collaboratively tracking logistics and manufacturing energy reduction.
Yeah, you mentioned manufacturing then, and just it'd be good to understand, maybe focusing on that a little bit in terms of, again, anything you can share, the sort of projects, because I mean, from the sort of, I guess, the semiconductors, the sort of small, all the components that are involved in building your solutions, right up to, as I say, that the final sort of production line, and then getting them out the door. So just this type of project, again, I don't know if there are typical projects or anything you can share about the type of work. Did you examine every little aspect of it and understand ways you can improve the sustainability efficiency of the manufacturing? Just anything you can share really on that front.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge topic by itself. So I'll go by given the time today, I'll just go very quick on a couple of points. So first point is we look at this from a complete cradle to grave life cycle point of view. So our manufacturing, as I said, manufacturing approach is obviously we have multiple suppliers and component suppliers. Nokia has a few of our own manufacturing sites, and then we have EMS suppliers, or what we call as the finished assembly suppliers. We have already committed to renewable energy, 100% renewable energy, so zero greenhouse gas emission by 2025 on our own facilities. But for our assembly suppliers, that target is by 2030. So a few more years. We look at what products the embedded carbon of what products go into our final goods, and then what happens in the end of life cycle in terms of the circularity programs as well. So what are we doing in terms of bringing back virgin material into our manufacturing cycle? So it's not just about in and out of our manufacturing plant, but closing the loop, because otherwise it just doesn't help. So for the supplier related work, because a lot of our manufacturing happens at our suppliers. By that I mean our EMS suppliers. We do monitoring, assessment, and auditing of activities and on-site programs. We follow EcoVadis sustainability assessment, as well as the CDP supply chain climate change and the supply chain water security assessment. The circularity program targets are also very, I would say, ambitious for us. We have a circular metal programs where we want to get to recycled aluminum by 90% of our aluminum will be recycled by 2030. We want to go 50% in stainless steel and copper and other materials in many of our products that are coming out of our factories. So, for example, in our Lightspan product range and fixed network, we are already getting rid of any plastic, and we want to make sure that it's completely recyclable material in terms of packaging. We have a factory, our own factory in Oulu, for example, which is in northern part of Finland, and they are churning out our Habrok set of mobile networks products. And we are making sure, or we already achieved that by end of 2023, that they're, apart from a small PE sheet and other things, most of other materials are non-virgin materials and they are recyclable. So this is requiring, obviously, working with many of the component suppliers and the ecosystems around it. We have already worked with Deutsche Telekom in their circularity goals for their supply chain. We're recently working from a Chennai factory in India to supply to Bharti in terms of their products being, the packaging of their products being recyclable. So multiple initiatives are underway. And of course, both our Oulu factory as well as the Chennai factories are continuously working to eliminate any waste in their process. They're working to they already achieved significant reduction in water usage in the factories, and they are in the process of, if not already, for some parts, 100% renewable energy powered factories. So yeah, continuous improvement and driving towards reduction of waste and circularity and improving circularity in every aspect of the assembly line is basically the mantra we are looking at.
And just quick, in terms of the supply chain, and when you have conversations, do you generally find that your supply chain understands what it is you're wanting to do and fully supportive, or are some companies nervous or just not that interested in engaging, or do you generally find, as I say, that everyone sort of understands and shares your vision, and therefore it's quite an easy conversation to have and collaborate with them?
I would be incorrect if I say it's always an easy conversation to have, but I would also be incorrect to say that if our supply chain don't share the vision that we are going for. I think the most, our team speak with and I speak with, most of our suppliers and value chain partners are on the same boat where we need to get to. All of us are committed in terms of our target. I would also highlight that, remember, many of our suppliers are also doing business with other companies. And as more and more companies and our peers are following similar bandwagon, that offers the opportunity for suppliers to also differentiate by doing the right thing. So there is, of course, carrots about this and there are sticks about this. But I think what's most motivational is, we offer new business opportunities. We, of course, have, supplier incentive programs, awards, and other things for more sustainable players, but new business opportunities are available with suppliers who do more and beyond what is minimally required. And so suppliers see the benefits of that, and they see new business, that they can get out of this, so investments may be worthwhile. But sometimes we do participate with our suppliers in co-investment. We believe that today's investment will reap benefits over a long period of time. So we do that for suppliers whom we find consider as strategic. Um, I would say the challenge that lies is perhaps in the sort of tier three, tier four suppliers where so suppliers who are not directly interacting with us, but they're in our supply chain. And many of the suppliers are relatively smaller businesses, and there is data quality and data exchange challenge. The whole supply chain is not digitalized as much as in sustainability as we would like to, and that's true for the industry. But also then there is challenge of real resource crunch and cultures in various markets come into play. So that's why we go into each of these markets where our key suppliers are. We spend hundreds of hours of workshop trainings. We partner with several industry organizations. So there is Responsible Business Alliance, which is a big alliance for electronics industry. We have the joint or the JAC, which is a joint audit cooperation for telecommunication industry. So all of these things put a common framework of how, if my expectation from my suppliers is going to be very different from the expectation from a similar customer, the supplier will be in even more trouble with a limited resource if you have to cater to multiple requirements. So we try to make this harmonized for our suppliers so that it's easier for them to move up in the value chain and in their drive into new sustainable initiatives without incurring a lot of additional cost and resource. So that's a key thing in our industry as well.
And
So we are involved in making sure many of the standardization of supply chain requirements also happen. That I didn't cover that, but that's on continuous work with various standardization agencies, as well as the technology standards like 3GPP and others, but also in the industry consortium standardizations as well, because that's key.
And I suppose overall, would you describe the path that you're on? Is it sort of evolutionary, so you're able to make sort of small and frequent changes to get where you need to be, or in some cases they're more revolutionary, where you completely change the way you might manufacture a product or source components or new materials, etc. Just if you're able to give us a flavour of say, is it just little increments, or sometimes you completely, I say, re-engineer a product? I don't know. Yeah, just your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Good question. I think there are a few areas where it is a lot of areas where it's evolutionary. So there is yearly target of if we achieve 75% this year, next year we go 80, following year we go 85. So that I think is true for many areas, but there are some areas where we need and we are working on revolutionary approach. I'll give a few examples. Related to suppliers, I think one of the key areas is multimodal transportation and taking out or moving to SAF for air transportation. That requires revolutionary approach. Just adding, a few gallons of SAF every year won't change. So it requires not always a partly technology driven revolution, but also a lot of times consortium and business model related revolution. If you take our pillars on bridging digital divide, it requires sometimes revolutionary technology change. We worked in South Africa with a few partners to come up with a new model, a business model, I would say, of how you can get broadband connectivity for villages on a sachet pricing model where people don't have to own, and they can pay as they go. So those are, I would say, revolutionary attempt to get into rural connectivity. We came up with a rural connectivity solutions for many part of Africa where there are no reliable power to power base station. So some of those things are definitely revolutionary in our sort of own scope 3 emissions. The work that is underway in terms of reducing 60% power consumption in our next generation chipsets is definitely revolutionary. But on the other hand, I would also highlight the various innovative ways of liquid cooling and virtual power plant that we launched at Mobile World Congress. the extreme deep sleep feature that we have now imbibed in our massive MIMO products is certainly revolutionary. Um, but all of these things are not going to work without, I would say, many, many things which are eventually evolutionary. Um, and we need to get our customers and us need to work together to get every year more and more base stations into renewable energy. We need to work for our own kind of suppliers. Once we have crossed working with tier 3 suppliers, we need to move with tier 4 suppliers. So all those evolutionary steps need to work in parallel.
Okay, and you've given me a lot of your time, for which I am very grateful. So
No
just
worries.
a sort of final question, but quite a big one. I'd be interested in your thoughts. So we obviously have this digital world rapidly evolving. AI is, I don't think we've mentioned it so far, but that's another conversation, and it's about to explode, we're told. And so there's going to be a lot more IT going on, even though, it's already significant amounts. So you've got the digital world, and then there's clearly this sustainability imperative. So in simple terms, can the two, coexist equally well, or do we have to have an element of compromise? So if we want a truly digital world with all the possibilities, we have to not ignore sustainability, but accept that we maybe won't get where we need to as fast as we need to, perhaps, or whatever. Or similarly, if we want to be completely sustainable, do we have to at some point say, okay, no more digital, whatever, whatever it is, there are enough mobile phones in the world, or, clearly that's very difficult to please. But just your thoughts, I suppose, as to how happily those two potentially conflicting, objectives are digital and sustainable.
Yeah, it's a really invigorating question, and I wouldn't say I have a crystal ball for this, but I'll share my perspective. First is um, I don't believe that digitalization and sustainability are in conflict with each other. In fact, I do believe very strongly that digitalization is a big enabler for sustainability. However, and before I come to however, I'll just expand by saying that, I mean, at a high level, if you think about this, uh, for whatever benefits of digitalization we have ripped, in our generation, in the past 30 or 40, 50 years since the advent of computer mainframes and all sorts of connectivity generations and so on, it's been still confined to 30% of world's GDP in the more digitalized economy, like telecommunication, media, power, as a media and technology industry. But a significant portion of where employment lies today, which is the physical industries, we think it's about 70% of world GDP, is still relatively low in the digitalization index. So there's a significant work that needs to happen. Good news is today's world of ICT are helping to merge the ICT communication and the OT, the operational technologies, and they're coming together very rapidly, as you know. And I think this is a great opportunity for the entire world to be digitalized as fast as some of the world that has already been digitalized. We also should not forget that a lot of this sustainable transition is about just transition. It's about people who have been not having the opportunity to transition and use digital skills for better access to healthcare, better access to education, better access to employment, also get that opportunity. So it's not enough for a handful of people in the world to be able to be on Zoom and doing all sorts of communication. It is important for the world's economy that a larger section of the population do have that access. So digitalization, I think, is a great enabler for sustainability. However, we need to keep pushing the envelope forward. And one of the key tools of digitalization that has accelerated accelerated the world in terms of pushing forward and shown huge benefit to us in recent times is AI. And we're in the very early days of large language modeling and other sorts of transformative AI tools. AI has been there for quite some time, but this transformative AI tools is in recent times. And I think we have huge usage of AI within Nokia and within telecommunication industry every day. But of course, one of the key challenges that the industry is facing is the AI modeling, at least based on the technologies that are available today, consumes a fair amount of power and water and other natural resources. And it is, I'm not an expert in this field, but I would say that there is a huge amount of work that's happening in large corporations as well as in startup world to be able to get to that point where we can harness the power of digitalization and AI without the apparent conflict it has with climate and other parameters. But given the benefit, the tremendous benefit and opportunities that just AI has to be able to influence the climate change, I think it's a worthy pursuit by humankind to be able to not worry about AI being a problem for sustainability, but quickly look at how we can solve the problem part of AI to harness it better for sustainability. Just weather modeling, just looking at how climate change will impact supply chain of corporations. AI has already given a huge insight and opportunity of how things can evolve, and I'm hopeful that technological breakthrough will come in soon in a way that we can manage the risk of AI's impact on sustainability for better sustainable growth and output for economies and society. So you can call me a hopeful. We'll figure out maybe collectively when we talk in a couple of years, Phil, where we land up. But that's my current hope.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, it's been such a joy to chat to you, and you shared some brilliant insights into what's going on at Nokia. So, Subho, I really appreciate the time you give me. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Phil. I really appreciate your time, and it was great to connect with you. I look forward to staying in touch.
Thanks again.